Hello, we are reading The Disorderly Nights by Dorothy Dunnett, and I've read a bunch of chapters. This is part 2, chapters 1 to 8. Couldn't stop reading, but I had to stop reading because then Will died. I've had my cry about Will already. I've accepted it. I should not have read this before I was going to work, but I did. And I had to stop reading there because I was like, okay, I've read a bunch of stuff and it's at a really interesting point in the story. So basically we've come back to Scotland, and the point we're at now where Lymond has just slept with Gelida and is disowned from his family. Gabriel is clearly manipulating this whole thing. And somehow, I don't know how he's doing it, but he is. I want him to be. He's not working with Margaret Lennox. I think he's a lone wolf. Why he's deciding to attack Lymond, I don't know. It's creepy. And then Will has died, and the sequence of events that led up to Will dying, though he was going to have to die anyway, I actually googled this, he did die at the age of 30 in one of these border skirmish battles. And if he's 30, he's older than Lymond by like 3 or 4 years, which I find very amusing considering he was like the kid in Game of Kings. So anyway, I laugh now, I wasn't laughing at the time, and it was because what Scott Buccleuch. Anyway, we'll get there in a bit. But the interesting thing we're at the moment, where the main character is so far in the low, like they're in like the, what's it called? The dark night of the soul part of the story. Everything's going wrong. It seems impossible that they're going to get out of the situation that they're in. And this happens multiple times in like all of Dunnett's books, but the cool thing about it is that the dark place that Lymond is in right now, where he's actually admitted that he doesn't really want to be alive right now, he wants to be unalive, is that a good portion of it is self-made with his own poor choices. Yes, a good portion is going to be out of his control, like the border skirmishes, obviously terrible. I 100% think that Gabriel was the one who set up the cattle that had been slaughtered that then made all the other clans get annoyed. Like, I do think that if he didn't set it up, he at least whispered it in people's ears. It is definitely bad because all of this external stuff is happening to Lymond that is kind of out of his control, but there was a bunch of stuff in his control that is actually just domino affected it to be the worst possible outcome. Like the dominoes were there waiting to be knocked over. Lymond didn't put them there, but he flicked the first one not knowing the consequences, and yeah. So, oh yes, Tom Erskine died, which is really sad because now I'm really worried, because if Tom is dead, no one is going to be around to defend Lymond like he was getting defended back in Game of Kings, and Tom was the one that helped. It was like, Richard, just calm down a second. He might not be the worst guy. And now he's gone. That he died without having any kids for some reason made me really sad. Like, he was just like, he was such good husband material, honestly. And not even that, he was just good material. He was just the goodest egg in all of the eggs. So looking back on these chapters now, I think a big thing is going to be that Tom said something to this old lady who later got killed, and also said it to Pippa Somerville. Why did this old lady get killed? I want to say that Gabriel did it because potentially Gabriel knows the thing that Tom was going to say to Lymond. We don't know what Tom was going to say to Lymond. But maybe Gabriel knew that there was a secret and wanted to prevent that secret getting out. It seems a bit far-fetched to me because Gabriel, I don't think at that point was even here, like around. But it just seems really suspicious that this old lady has a secret that she was going to go tell someone. And gets murdered on the way. I don't know. And Tom really wanted to say something. There's this line here that's like, the war that he had helped to end had preserved his land from a scourge. The peace, it seemed, was to kill him. Oh. Poor Tom. And it's just really sad because he really wanted to speak to Frances. He listened to what she had to say, and it came to him that Frances Crawford could make use of that gossip, except that he was dying and Frances was abroad. So this gossip, whatever it is, I feel like it's going to be something really important that is going to get Lymond out of all of the trouble that he's currently in. And I'm hoping that Pippa realizes this eventually, because Pippa must know, because both her parents have told her, and surely she must understand at 13 that Lymond is a good man. Like, if he was truly trusted by both of his parents, but both of her parents, you'd think she's gonna figure that out. There's a point where, like, Jarrett and Lymond are speaking, and Jarrett is saying that what order with regards to the Knights of the Cross are basically, like, dead to him. And Lymond is like, well, Lymond doesn't say this, but Lymond is totally going to be thinking, okay, so now you admit it. Now you admit that now that you have conveniently left the order, you're now going to, like, forsake them and say, oh, they're not a real thing. Like, how convenient for Jarrett to believe that. Like, I was a true believer, completely to the cause behind, what's his name? Diomedes. I was completely behind the cause until I wasn't. And now I'm completely against them. It's just like, oh my gosh. Lymond's eye rolls can be heard all the way in Perth, Australia from Scotland, and across time. Like, I really hate Jarrett for saying, but she's no beauty with regards to Pippa. And then the next scene we have is Gelida holding a gun to these men. And I'm honestly, she's just weird, creepy. Like, every scene that she is in feels wrong. It feels forced. It's so weird. She's holding a gun at people. Why does she feel the need to defend the dead body of an old lady? Like, why would she even put herself in that position? She has wires missing. Like, she's putting herself in harm's way without regard really for her own safety. Like, there's something, yeah, missing wires. Also, like, Jarrett saying, but she's no beauty to Lymond. I honestly don't think Lymond is completely and utterly, I don't know what the word is. Like, I kind of want to call Lymond a sapiosexual in that he is far more sexually attracted to the personality or intelligence, the intelligence of the person, and not necessarily to their looks. So kind of a weird thing for Jarrett to say that, but it's such a shame that in front of Jarrett, Lymond wasn't kind to Pippa, because I think Lymond had been trying to be so kind to Pippa for so long and then has kind of just given up, and that giving up part was what Jarrett saw, which is a bit of a shame. At this point though, like the whole time, Lymond has just learned about Tom Erskine dying, and so he must be really hurting. I love it how Lymond refers to Gelida as a peach and says, let me deal with it first. And also this, Jarrett's POV is like, he's like shaking, he sees Gelida and he's like shaking, and he holds some sort of vine, a bush, so hard that he draws blood in his hand. Come on, you can't be so beautiful that you draw blood from clenching your fist. His eyes were wet. Gabriel's amazing sister. Done it. Marry them off. Marry off Jarrett with Gelida. Just marry them off, please. Jarrett's no longer in the order. No, actually, I think Gelida would eat Jarrett for breakfast. Lymond flogs a lot of people in this. He's like, and like as he's creating the army, he's like not shy about whipping a man. The torchbearer who moved is to be flogged and turned off with pay. This is the torchbearer who revealed Lymond as he was sneaking up behind Gelida. That's actually the most hilarious thing. It's like the one thing you need to learn if you're ever going to work with Lymond is let him be sneaky and let him do his tricks. Don't fuck up, sorry my language, don't screw up his tricks and his surprise little things. Like, don't screw up his tricks. He will be angry and he will fire you. So funny. It's hard reading this now because I feel like I'm in such a bad place with where Lymond is right now, but Lymond getting back home and then going to see Sibylla and being like, then Lymond closed the door and not even Richard would have intruded on them. It's just so cute. I want that scene. I want the scene between Lymond and Sibylla on paper. We always talk around it, done it. Jarrett's POV is my favourite POV. It's so funny. Kind of like Will Scott's POV, just like so righteous internally. It's so, there's just like a lack of insight there. Also, we get very little Gabriel POV through this whole thing. Want to go back now and read all the stuff with Gabriel because now that I'm pretty certain that he's just not okay, I want to read that. So anyway, there's a bunch of stuff that happens. Lymond makes this big crew. Lots of things go right, lots of things go wrong. There's a bunch of new characters, which are really cool. I like that. And the chapter that is called The Lusty May is the one where Lymond goes to talk to Thompson, which is pretty cool. And Thompson is wanting Lymond to get drunk for the first time in a long time, otherwise he won't talk with him. And yeah, it was kind of annoying. So you could see things, it's just it's a perfect storm essentially is what happened. Lymond gets drunk. Someone's watching Lymond as he leaves his room to come back where Gelida is waiting. And this is right after, in the previous chapter, or early this chapter, we had the scene where Gabriel is like tying a ribbon around her throat and basically saying, seduce him. So Gabriel, who is like a lot older, like if he's in his mid-30s, he's like 20 years older than Gelida. Is Gelida even his sister? Is it not his daughter? I mean, 20 years, you can have siblings 20 years apart. That's fine. It's just like, you could have a daughter who's 20 years apart from you. And yeah, it definitely makes me think Gelida was pregnant that time she got sick when Richard was taking her back. I think I actually said that. What if she was pregnant with Gabriel's child? No, that would be too disgusting. I wouldn't put it past Dunnett though. No, but they had another target that they were trying to get something out of, and Gabriel uses his sister to... I don't understand Gabriel's intentions, honestly. I don't, unless he's Satan, like he is Lucifer, he's not the Archangel Gabriel, he is Lucifer, in which case he doesn't need an intention to create evil, he just wants to create it by his nature. In this chapter, now that I've seen the amount of manipulation that Gabriel has probably been doing to Gelida her entire life, I have more sympathy for her. I also definitely have sympathy for her, like, dressing up, planning to like strip naked in front of Lymond. If I had one night in Scotland back then and I knew I was really close to Lymond and I had a pretty dress on, I might do the same thing. But no, I wouldn't do that, would I? But I wouldn't have done it when I was 16. Like, I respect her for her guts and all of her behavior, like the stuff, what was she doing with Kevin, like Richard's son? Like, what the hell was that? Like, Lymond has placed ears and eyes at Midcoulter because he's just like, the girl is crazy. Like, Lymond knows that there's something wrong with Gelida because he also knows there's something wrong with Gabriel. And so he's just like, I don't trust her being at home around my nephew, who Lymond loves, is his little nephew. who we just met for the first time, which was the sweetest scene when they met. And Sibylla cried. Ugh, I just want to go and have dinner with the Coulter family, like just like with all of the family and just chat to them. Like there was, I think at one point during Jarrett's POV, Jarrett was like talking to Richard and Sibylla, and he was like, the conversation was varied and deep. Like it was a great conversation. There was lots of different topics and they were like well explored. Like this wasn't just a family making general chit chat. It wasn't gossip. It wasn't small talk. Like they were talking in depth about topics, like an intellectual family of which Richard is a part. I just want to sit there and have dinner with them, and Jolita's got to do that this whole time. So I think maybe I'm really just jealous of her, but no, she's weird. Yep, so she's getting groomed by Gabriel to seduce Lyman. For what reason? I have no idea. To corrupt Lyman. There's nothing Gabriel can really gain from that. Like it really doesn't make that much sense. Like what is he gaining from doing all this, from making Lyman look bad by making maybe he's undermining his military, his militia, his little military he's making. But no, that scene with the sister where he was like seduce him, or like it was creepy. Like you leaning forward, slipped a lovely ribbon onto her hair and closed it round her throat, drew his sister forward and kissed her. Unclear where he kissed her. Like this could have been written in a very different way where I think we had a scene before where he was like holding ribbon away from her so that she could snatch it. But the way that it's written, like using the word throat and not specifying exactly where she was kissed, and then she was kissed again. And also, if Jolita really wanted to actually have Lyman sexually, which I think she did, because I think that she has heard so much about Francis for like years leading up to this, and she's a teenager. Like this has been like, Frances Crawford has been like the shining idol of her teenage years. She's gonna be obsessed, especially when Gabriel kind of encourages that, because now Gabriel's like, oh, he is like important, we need to convert him. Gabriel could have said, please don't sexually be turned on by Lyman, please stay away from him in that regard, please just talk to him piously and convert him to our religion. He didn't say that. It's just so weird that he's suggesting that she uses whatever means necessary, because it says here, he finds your charms, sweetheart, are aging, or you haven't properly tried. As in, like, he's saying, try harder, use everything you can to convert him to Christianity. No, you don't convert someone to Christianity by like stripping naked in front of them. That's like kind of the opposite of what Gabriel should be standing for. What do you mean convert him? What does he mean convert him? It's just so weird. Like he was literally suggesting that she should use more of her charms, but say convert to Christianity. No, he doesn't mean that. He's meaning something else. It's so weird. Okay, and yes, I forgot. Una's baby with blonde hair. Gabriel, if it wasn't clear, the thing that makes it clear that you cannot deny now that Gabriel is bad is that he's holding the existence of this child from Lyman and paying a lot of money to do that. And I just really hope that Dragut, who was once Lyman's friend, actually turns around and tells Lyman this. Like, there's a part of me that just wishes that that would be the case, that Dragut comes through, that pulls through, or somehow Una finds a way to get the message to Scotland that she's kind of trapped there now because she can't leave, because she'll talk about the fact that Lyman has a son. Why would Gabriel not want Lyman to know about his son? Because at this point, it really probably wouldn't make much of a difference if he was... I guess Lyman would have to go over to Turkey to get him. What's his name? I should know. Karadin. Yeah, you're right. He'd probably personally go over and get the kid, which would disrupt everything that they're doing now in the military. So maybe that's why Gabriel's stopping Lyman from doing that. Still makes no sense that he's sending Jolita to try and seduce him. Like, what the hell? What's that? That's a distraction? It's just not making sense to me. I'm sure I'll figure this out on a reread. Lymond actually sleeping with her, like if you say the age of consent is 16, which we do here in Australia, is legally fine in my country. And I think that she is consenting in the way she knows how, but we have to take this in the context of her having a very abnormal childhood because her older brother is Gabriel. The fact that she is actually like highly obsessed with Francis as well. But I think genuinely she was consenting. I just think that like obviously like it was so cringe when Lymond accepted. I just really wanted him to walk away. That would have been so good. Like, and the fade to black after he says what you need is a master, it's like, oh my god, Dunnett didn't even have it in herself to write the scene of the scene which Richard finds after, by the way, Richard actually goes and checks on Lymond at some point and hears sounds of sex from behind the door. So it's confirmed, because I was like, what, have we even confirmed that it happened? The room's destroyed and she's naked, but yeah, no, it definitely happened. Yeah, Lymond's door was locked and his rap went unanswered despite distinct sounds from within. Distinct. And then he goes away and then comes back and then they open the door. So the room is destroyed. She's naked and crying and bruised. I was listening to the Lymond Book Club and I can't remember who made the comment that like she probably enjoyed it, like angry, violent sex. And also that Lymond doesn't believe at all the ruse about her being like, how she's being like all innocent. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to make love. He's just like, I don't believe that for a second. So I just wonder how Lymond has gotten that impression. Like, because she's been so violent in the past when she was throwing stuff at him, because she literally picked up a gun and fired it, accidentally almost killing Lymond. Like, there are issues with this girl and now she potentially enjoys getting hurt. And Lymond is just like, she's a bitch who needed a lesson. I don't know if you gave her a lesson, Lymond, but I think you gave her exactly what she wanted. But I don't know. There was 3 hours that passed. Well, we know it was supposed to be an hour and it was 3 hours, because if it was an hour, probably Lymond would have been able to get to these places on time and Will Scott would have been alive. But no, Will would have had to have died either way, based on history. We get that. But there were 3 hours that passed, and so I kind of want to think that they weren't violent and having sex the whole time, and that Lymond maybe got some information out of her or something. I wonder if he knows if Gelida, in her stress or whatever, in her desperation, told Lymond about the baby. In which case, Lymond, in his drunk state, because he was super drunk, would have been really angry, because then he would have found out for sure that Gabriel is behind this. Or maybe Gelida said something else. I don't know. I'm just intrigued as to, I feel like getting the fade to black and not getting the full story as to what happened behind those doors, something significant happened. And we also don't know who the guy was that watched from the shadows behind his just open door, Adam Belcock, who saw Lymond reach his own door, open it, stop dead. So he was behind his just open door, Adam Belcock. But then a man was also watching him from below when he opened a window in the, I think it was a house separated from the main building where Thompson was. Was that also Adam, or was that a different guy? And if it is a different guy, this is a different guy who is basically working for Gabriel, reporting on Gelida's actions to Gabriel in the creepiest way possible. And a part of me is just like, Gabriel's going to be so proud of Gelida going to do this and finally seducing Lymond for whatever reason, I don't know. It's why? What is the motivation? I don't understand the character motivation. This is chaos. I also just want to say that the cruelest thing that has happened to Lymond is totally the fact that Lymond was trying to stay by Will Scott's side in the off chance that he was going to wake up and talk to Lymond just before he died, and Lymond tried to stay there was told to go back to bed. I think some of his, maybe the Randy, knocked him out so that he would sleep because they were genuinely worried that Lyman needs to sleep. So that I think they did it like in good faith. But then they also, I think, gave him some alcohol so that he would stay asleep, which meant that Lyman wasn't awake when Will woke up. And the fact that when Watt was there and crying and all he said was he asked for the Master of Kulta as if you were his commander, and when they told him you couldn't have come, he said you'd be etc, etc. So like Lyman, it's so weird and rare seeing Lyman speechless, but he's speechless twice here. Like Lyman says, I didn't know, they couldn't have tried, he was white. And then again, he says, what? As in what Scott, said Lyman, and stopped. Like he's so speechless at this point. I can't remember, have we ever seen Lyman cry? Yeah, maybe that one time when he was fighting with Richard. He doesn't cry now. He just wants to die. He must feel so awful. He needs to eat something. I love it how Lyman said, would you let me tell Grizel? And just Will died knowing that he was gonna die. Like it wasn't like he got a sword to the throat and he died quickly. Like he was defending the stairs. I had to go back and read it because I was like, did he really have to stand there? Who gave the keys to the courtyard of the Curse that got in? Also, if Will didn't have to pick up Pippa, he wouldn't have been there and wouldn't have died. But, you know, he had to die, I get it, because, you know, history. Lyman, it wasn't your fault he was going to die. He was going to die anyway, according to history, okay? So now I've just got, like, I need a Will Scott to fill my empty hole of Will Scottness. And so that has to be Jarrett, but I just don't know. Jarrett wasn't as witty as Will. Will had so much more wit. Well, like there was one guy who I think was quite cool, and that was Adam Blacklock? No, Alex Guthrie, the lecturer and humanist. Be interesting to see what side these fall, if they are for or against Lyman in the end. Lyman's like, I just feel like he did work his military a little bit hard. Like he's not capable of moderation, Lyman. He's like, he picks one thing and does it to excess. Like in Queensblade, he was Teddy Boy to the excess. In Game of Kings, he was the outlaw to the excess. And now he is the hardline military leader to the excess who wants independence. And I'm still like, go back to that chat that I kind of feel like we need O'Liamro to come back and be like, did you learn nothing about leadership that we just had? To be fair, the fact that Lyman can actually hold them all together as a leader of like a whole bunch of really opinionated, strong men is like, it's pretty impressive. It's just, yeah. Anyway, I read these chapters really quickly because I was on a holiday and I wanted to keep reading. Today, if you must know, I don't like living at all. But that's just immaturity boggling at the sad face of failure. Tomorrow I'll be bright as a bedbug again. That's just immaturity at the sad face of failure. I love that line so much. It's like when you throw your hands in the air and you're like, I am done with today. I'm just going to remember, that's immaturity boggling in the face of failure. Will Scott had parted from Lyman forever and was going home on his own. Eager no more, quiet and still in his empty farm wagon, grandly robed in Gabriel's own famous habit. Blech. With the cross of St. John on his breast. I put that on Will. Will Scott had parted from Lyman forever and was going home to his own. If you all didn't cry at the end of this chapter, I have questions. That was really sad to read and just and a nice way to end it as well. So yeah, I'm gonna take like a couple of weeks to process the fact that Will is dead. And reading back Game of Kings is gonna be really hard. Like, I did not expect him to die. I just thought he's the perfect companion for Lymond for the rest of the book. I don't know, I didn't really think, I need to think about who's going to die, don't I? Because there's going to be others. I kind of want Gelida to die. Or like Lymond saving Gelida from something at some point in front of Gabriel, even though he would hate it. Like, I genuinely think that Lymond does not like Gelida, and he's definitely going to hate her, even though he was blaming her for all of the frustration he had in Malta, putting up with Gabriel. Like, he's taken that out on her, which was so cringe and wrong. And this is why it's so hard to, like, I'm filled with equal sympathy for Lymond for the fact that a whole bunch of this was out of his control, but also equal disgust for him. And that's why I think this is such clever writing, to have those two warring feelings about your protagonist. It's just so clever. And it's just not something you often get. Usually you are like so on the side of the main character, you have so much sympathy for them. You're sure they've done things not perfectly, but you really want them to succeed. And I do want Lymond to succeed, I really do. But like at the same time, I'm just so frustrated at him. And it's really interesting because I think Sibylla, because the first thing Lymond says when he realized Richard has seen what's happened with Gelida is like, don't tell mum. Just don't tell mum. Tell anyone else, don't tell mum. Which is a pipe dream, which is never going to happen because Sibylla's going to know. She's going to be one of the first people to know. And Sibylla was also one of the people early on who was like not necessarily against Gelida and Lymond being together. And Sibylla is not stupid. Like, she's the one that figured out the whole Andrew Hunter stuff in Game of Kings that ended up saving Lymond's like life. Sibylla has been living with Gelida for a period of time. She must have noticed this girl is screwed up. Like, that she must notice that. Did she notice the stuff with Kevin? Have they talked about that? So I can only assume that when the news gets back to Sibylla about Lymond's gentle lovemaking with Gelida, who was not coerced at all into this and completely consensual, and he too was also entirely sober. And it was just a nice quick session, nothing was broken, no clothes were torn. When this gets back to Sibylla, she's going to be like very concerned for Lymond's well-being, because she's going to instantly then find out that Will Scott is dead. And she's going to know that Lymond is going to blame himself for that. And so I do think Sibylla, like, I want to pay her some credit. I think that she's going to read between the lines here. Like, I don't think she's going to be too angry at Lymond, because I just think that she's probably been observing things very smartly. And even though, like, there's obviously, he should have kicked Gelida out of his room, and I feel like I can't really say he shouldn't have been drunk, because he didn't know Gelida was going to be waiting for him. He didn't know there was about to be an attack. He could have certainly predicted it by not getting drunk. Yeah, that's the truth. But at the end of the day, he shouldn't, if he was sober enough to be able to say, what are you doing here? And have a conversation with Gelida, he was sober enough to walk away. And he was too drunk to resist. He was really angry. And yeah, as I said, his issue is rage. It's the one thing he struggles to control. And he can't flog Gelida, so... So yeah, I do think that even though Lymond is going to be really scared of Sibylla's reaction, I kind of have faith that she's kind of like us. Like, she's going to be able to see that, yeah, bad decisions were made, but also there's something bigger at play that we're missing. I feel like I'm definitely missing something bigger at play, and I'm going to keep reading. I will try to just read one chapter next time, because then I can actually talk about it in detail and not just get really overwhelmed by how much I'm talking about. I'll see you in the next video. I almost forgot another really interesting thing that I was thinking about, as both Will and Tom have died in quick succession, and also, what was his name? Somerville, Gideon. These are all characters who were very sympathetic to Lymond and would back him up in an instant. Even if Lymond did multiple bad things, they would have seen, Yeah, but he also, overall, we know his core character is good. These three characters are now dead, and they have died in this book. And I can't help but think that at some point, Dunnett was thinking, I need a crunch where all of the allies that he's made in previous books that have saved his ass are not going to be around in a subsequent book because they're going to die naturally. And she's like, okay, well, who's going to die in 1551 and 1550? These three characters, Tom, Will, Gideon. So I'm going to make Lymond purposefully close to all of these three so that they can all die at a convenient time when he was really going to need them most. And if that's actually how she's thought of it, I have massive respect for that. That's just such a cool thing, like, to be thinking that far ahead. Maybe she didn't, but I can't help but notice that Lymond he's lost a lot of his, like, Game of Kings and Queen's Play allies just like that at this really inconvenient time.